So the semester's back up starting, and I've had a chance to talk with some colleagues back at school about some of their recent experiences with new technologies and with YouTube, Skype, and some others. And I think from the reactions I've got, I think some of the people, at least, are having very similar experiences, their reactions and sensibilities. And I thought I would just share with YouTubers here one of the concerns that I think came up yesterday in the discussion, and I think this is a concern for people. I have been shooting some videos on analog communication, and maybe that will be a relevant point for people to think about as this goes on. But I think the concern is a rise in what could be called dogmatic relativistic individualism. You can see it in so many ways on YouTube, but it's as if there is again, it's a kind of dogmatic relativistic individualism. I think it's an atheistic trend, it's a naturalist trend, and I think it's trying to counterbalance some of the dogmatic fundamentalist religious views that are being posted on YouTube as well. And it just seems very unfortunate that there's sort of one kind of dogmatism being replaced by another kind of dogmatism, but both of them being equally kind of an individualist orientation. And I think the way to really get at this, if you want to see it on YouTube, you have to look at some of those, and I'm not going to name people. You're going to have to decide for yourself. I mean, you're going to have to look around and look for yourself. But there is a kind of cocky individualism, this kind of some foul-mouthed person who's cussing all the time and really conveying more attitude than substance. It's a lot of show and a lot of performance, and even if this person or these people who are doing this are making it seem as if they're beyond selling ideas and commercialization, what they're really doing is selling a image and an attitude of cocky individualist rebellion, of don't you tell me what I can do and what I can't do, all this kind of stuff. It's so tragic. It's so tragic to think of how much the difference between freedom from and freedom to is not registered, that most of the great artists, the great musicians, people who are talented and cultivated, they're free to do those beautiful things. A person's free to grab the saxophone and play a beautiful jazz composition only to the extent that that person is self-disciplined and constrained in that. And so this cocky individualist freedom to do what everyone wants to do, people should really be on the lookout. What they're doing is they're becoming part of the mega consumer capitalist machine. This sort of cocky, freewheeling, sort of, performative individualism that's all a show and a kind of demonstration of attitudinal rebellion. It makes it look like being a self is to be in rebellion, or even worse, as if a self comes down to expressing consumer choices and consumer preferences. I think naturally, so much of self, or what we call ego, right? The ego that identifies itself as the, quotes, source of consciousness, or the common ground to consciousness. This, in Eastern traditions, is an illusion. In the West, it's come to be the dominant reality. I think people cling to ego, and this ego is it's a nesting of consumer preferences or product identities, and people, it's as if they take pride in being atheistic, or they take pride in being religious, or it's as if it's not just Coke and a smile and buy Nike shoes. Its beliefs themselves are no longer really engaged in beliefs in a community of thinkers who want to talk about the ideas and open vulnerability to one another. Instead, there's a kind of clinging, attitudinal, it's almost as if humans are reverting to a kind of barbarism. And this barbarism is a reliance upon analogic communication. It's like dominance and submission shows. Watch for people who have lots of subscriptions on their channels, and they're basically just ranting foul mouth and giving attitude that conveys conviction, but there's really no substance to anything that they're saying. It's funny, I have some colleagues, and we're at a university, so I have colleagues from all around the world. We have some colleagues, obviously, whose native tongue is not English, And we could say, well, they don't speak the language that well. Well, it's not really true. I mean, many of them you would not want to go head to head on a vocabulary test. I mean, the lexicon and the command over English is actually quite good. What you'll find is a sort of fluency problem. They may not be as fluent in composing, and they also may have difficulty with colloquialisms or sort of common expressions that you'd have to learn by convention or something like this. That said, you should hear how some of these foul-mouthed attitudinal speakers on YouTube sound to an intelligent, non-native English speaker. Some person with GDMF and MF and FFF this, FF that. I mean, what is that? Is it trying to titillate? Does this person feel powerful in speaking that way? It sounds like a fearful little animal who is trying to bring reality back by way of words, and it's a kind of sensationalism. I think so many of the things that look as if they're intellectual engagements, and there are some that seriously are. I mean, YouTube is chock full of, such a wide diversity of views and of competency levels. And there are some people who are really trying to engage in ideas, and you can feel that they're vulnerable in their discussion, right? I think of my colleague who said that communication refers to the habits and practices by which we are made vulnerable to the humanity of others. Yeah, that seems to be a willingness to communicate, but it's almost like so many people on YouTube, many people who they subscribe to these channels, which rather than conveying vulnerability, they convey a cloak of cocky attitudinal individualism, a sort of shoot from the hip and rebellious youth. And I think people don't realize that they're just becoming tools to the corporate machine. That corporate capitalism, consumer capitalism, depends upon people thinking of themselves as sort of momentary, cocky individuals who can be reduced down to expressing their consumer choices, and that's really what a person is. Instead of trying to look at the long, slow, cultivated talents that one could have, playing a musical instrument, crafting oneself in terms of arts or capacities, and instead of really growing a mind worth wanting and being a genuine intellectual, there's this kind of parade and show which is so bereft of substance, and yet people cling to it. And when I see people cling to it, I can't help but see a kind of rise of barbaristic animality, where people are responding to the analogic clues of the voice. It's you don't want to say this, other people have said it, but I think some people believe that the new media are grooming people to be little, like, totalitarianist Nazis. And it seems like, oh no, it's individuals, we're all individuals. Yeah, we're all individuals, saying it in unison while we're goose-stepping together. I mean, it's ridiculous. This sort of rebellious, cocky individualism that people can't see how much of a broken record and a cliche that is, and how much this is a kind of underbelly, a necessary metaphysics to consumer capitalism. Until people want to sort of really challenge what they're thinking about how their appeal to this cocky individualism, why it is that they have an allure to that. What is it that's alluring about some person who's swearing all the time and sort of conveying in this Tarantino-esque manner about nothing really matters and this, that, and the other thing and da-da-da. Whatever the view is, things do matter and da-da-da. The way that it's postured and performed, I think it is very apparent when you look at subscription rates, when you look at substance, when you look at the way people are talking and responding. It's very apparent that we are ambiguous, fearful animals who are clinging dogmatically to ideas because we don't really know. And I think there is a sort of fear as people wane in literacy. Literacy gives genuine individualism. Yes, you have to sit alone and tolerate it, and you'll have to cultivate it. It's not this convenient, easy sort of pseudo-sociality of individual. Here, people come home and they're alone on their computer, but it doesn't feel alone. Solitude is what you get through literacy. You and another mind in an intimate encounter. This is a dramatic show and a performance, and I think tons of people are paying attention to the performance rather than to what's being said. I think people should look out for that.